What if your body holds the secrets to profound wisdom that you've never fully tapped into? Imagine unlocking an intuitive power that guides your every step, leading you deeper to self-understanding and clarity. So that's what we're going through today in reflections in this episode of Reflections of the Sacred Self. How to listen to the whispers in your body and awaken the incredible intelligence that's already within you. So, I am going to start this with a little bit of science and understanding around the nervous system, and around polyvagal theory created by Dr. Stephen Porges. Now, he came up with this concept of neuroception, and these are the undetected, the unconscious signals that the body picks up on and that responds to, and then that sends through the vagus nerve the message up to the brain. And then what happens is we then create our stories around these sensations. And so there is some element of being able to tune in, because we have to interpret what these body sensations are, and that's when the brain comes in and it thinks too much. So when we're using our intuition, this is around when we're thinking about a specific situation, and then we start to tune into the body and how does the body feel when we think about that situation. So maybe it's butterflies in your stomach, a knot in your chest when something feels off, or I get like a feeling in the pit of my stomach, and a deep sigh of relief when you say no to something that doesn't feel right to you. All of these things are signals coming from the body all the way up from the vagus nerve. And so it's kind of that understanding. So for example, I've had in the past, when I started working in banking, before I got offered a job in a particular bank, I walked past it and I just had a deep sense of knowing that I was going to work in that bank. And it was like something in my internal, in my body, picked up on something from there. And then that sent the signal back to me. And, by the other side of things, it's when you ignore stuff. So it's meeting people, and I've had this where I've met people, and my instant gut response to that person has been no. It's like a big no from my body. But I've allowed my brain to override that and thought, well, no, they seem okay. And then ultimately what my first instinct was ends up being proved right. And so that's why we need to start to tune in to the body and actually listen to it. Because there is a connection. Now, I've talked about the vagus nerve, but the vagus nerve is actually not just one nerve, it's a collection of nerves. And ultimately the messages run from the body to the brain. It's about 80% go from the body to the brain. And what I mentioned before about neuroception. So when we're in an environment or we meet a new person, we're picking up on body language, the tone of someone's voice, whether an environment feels safe to us, and all of these different signals that are biologically wired within us. And our body is picking up on that before consciously we do anything. And that's called neuroception. And then so your body then starts to respond to those feelings of safety. So we've all met someone who feels a bit off, and we might feel uncomfortable in their company, and we don't know why. And often that's because maybe it's the way they speak, or their body language that our body interprets as a danger or a risk. And we then get that feeling internally, and then that sends it up to our brain that there's something to be worried about here. It's one of the reasons why particularly, I have a son who has ASD, and particularly why people with ASD may struggle with communication, because the way in which they communicate is different to a neurotypical person. And so we are wired to respond to the way neurotypical people communicate. So when a neurodivergent person communicates in a different way, our bodies interpret it in a certain way, sends the signals up to the brain, and then the brain says there's something off here, and then they respond because your brain then creates a story around what's off. So it's why often people think neurodivergent people are being rude when they're not, they're just being direct, because it's not how neurotypical people speak. And so your body responds, your brain creates a story. They feel uncomfortable in that situation. So it's just starting to tune into that and understanding, and this to understand, and this is where it gets deeper, because not only do we feel it, send it to the brain, but we then have to try and work out the story that we've created around that. And so is that a genuine story, or is it something that which actually, like talking to a neurodivergent person, which actually can be discussed and analysed and understood? Or is it a genuine fear? Sometimes you meet, especially being a woman, you might be out and you meet a man and you just instantly get vibes. There's something, your body has picked up on something that consciously you haven't, and you just instantly get vibes and you think, I'm in danger here. And it's just the body's natural way of responding, and it sends those messages up to the brain. And gut feelings are real. So, the enteric nervous system, often called the second brain, houses 100 million neurons. Okay, so that is real. So that everything that's going on in the gut, it's real. You have got senses happening there. So when you get that gut feeling, you get the hunch, you get the feeling, that's really happening. All these body signals are happening. And if you go back thousands of years, in some of the older traditions like Taoism and Buddhism and yoga and all of these ancient wisdoms, it's always been taught that the body holds knowledge that the mind can't access alone. So this is not a new theory, but it's something that in the West, scientifically, we've been starting to prove relatively recently. So, for example, like it was around about the year 2000 when we sort of understood that most of the messages went from the body to the brain via the vagus nerve. And the fact that we understood about the gut feelings being real has been less than 20 years. And so these kind of things we're starting to understand, and that with our ability to, oh my goodness, my brain's gone, to develop our brain and what's it called? My brain's just gone in the middle of this talking, but to be able to do that, it's what happens. And so we know that we can train the brain, we can learn, and we can learn from the signals that our body is sending us. But we also need to tune into it at the moment, because sometimes we need to understand why we're getting those signals, what's happening internally, and what stories we're telling ourselves. But some of the practices that you can come into that can help, breathwork is a great one. Now, why is breathwork perfect? Breathwork calms the nervous system. So it switches us into a calmer state. So that allows us to just listen if there's anything that comes up. So when we come to a calm state, bring up what we want to think about or bring up senses about the person and feel what our body tells us, because we can then feel the shifts. And that allows us to hear our intuition because we've calmed everything else. Because obviously in our day-to-day life, there's lots of input and things going on. So we can breathe really deeply. We can activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the vagal ventral response. We're really now nice and calm. So then you can bring to mind a situation, bring to mind a question that you want answered, bring to mind a person, and allow your body to tell you what it has to say about that situation or person or event or anything that you want to ask. And while you're doing that, once you've done the question, do a body scan. So notice what you're feeling. And when you feel it, is it a fear because what you're doing is putting you outside of your comfort zone? Or is it actually because it's a no and it's something that scares you? And so it's starting to understand that as well and come into that side, because sometimes we have things that are difficult and we shy away from difficulty because we like to live inside our comfort zones. So if it's just taking you outside your comfort zone, then that's not necessarily something to back away from. But if it's like no, absolutely not. So you meet that person and you think, you maybe go out with them once and you think, maybe, I don't know, I got some vibes, what do I think? You do this and you ask yourself, is it because you're afraid of starting something new? Or did you genuinely get no vibes from that person? And tune into that and start to kind of learn what your body is telling you. And you can then do somatic journaling. So that will allow you to kind of like go deeper. So you can ask yourself when you're journaling, how does this feel in my body? Right? And so you go deeper than just, you're not just doing what's coming up in your mind. You're telling yourself what your body is sharing. So you're asking what your body is sharing. And that can really help to go deeper. So it might be things like my chest feels, and then you journal about that, or my gut says, and you journal about that. And you can just say, my body is showing me what. And so you're using that whole calm parasympathetic state, thinking about something, listening to what the body is telling you. And then, like I said, it's distinguishing what's a message and what's intuition, what's your body, what's emotions and what's intuition. So emotions are often fast, they're charged, they're story driven. So if you start to tell yourself a story about what you're feeling, so you're now creating that story about what's going on inside your body, that story is your emotions. That's how you're feeling about something. Your intuition tends to be quieter, steadier. It often feels neutral but clear. So it's something that is pulling you in a direction and you don't really know why, or something that's telling you no and you don't have a story around it. You're just getting a no and starting to listen into that and learn what your yeses and what your nos are. So when you sort of get used to this, you can start to cultivate it into your life and develop daily practices for that body and mind connection. So I'm all about the micro pauses throughout the day, and this allows you to tune into your body. So at regular intervals, you could even do this hourly. You can stop for a minute, put your hand on your heart and ask, what do I need right now? Or how is my body feeling? What does my body need to tell me? And just allow yourself to ask one of those questions or three of those questions, whatever feels right to you, and just tune into the signals from your body. And you can do grounding rituals because this can really help you to allow your intuition to come in. So doing some mindful stretching, doing some barefoot walking. The longer we can spend barefoot, the better, because we connect our feet to the earth, we take the energy from the earth, we ground, we connect, we center, and it allows our intuition to flow through us. And starting to track. So note the sensations and outcomes that we're getting. So if we get a sensation and we act on it, what was the outcome? And also noticing when we're getting these gut feelings and we don't act on it, starting to journal about what the outcome of that is as well. Now, some of the barriers that you might notice while you're doing this is that stress can hijack your awareness. Because when you're in fight or flight, it kind of narrows your focus and drowns out all the noise. Okay, so you can't hear it, which is why we do the deep breathing before you want to ask a question, to bring yourself back into the fight or flight, the ventral vagal state, not the fight or flight, the rest and digest and the ventral vagal state, so that you can then ask those questions from a clear, calm place. And the other thing is conditioning. So we are conditioned to trust logic over feelings, right? We're in society, it's like, what is your brain telling you? And there's always this whole argument of head over heart. But we never actually talk about, what about the gut? What's the gut telling us? What are our instincts telling us? And it's about learning to override logic and go with our instincts. And then we're worried about discomfort. So often we dismiss body wisdom because it might suggest slowing down or saying no. And that's another fear within us. We're afraid to say no. We're worried of the consequences if we say no, or if we slow down, or if we don't do this, or if we make this decision. So again, we're allowing our brain to come in and to override what we're feeling naturally. So really what you need as you develop this is a bit of patience, because intuition is a bit like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. But you can't force it to suddenly come through and be amazing. But if you continue to work at it, it will get stronger and you will start to be able to listen to it in a much more natural way. So when we start to do that, we get some really great benefits come through in our lives. Firstly, we start to get more clarity in the decisions that we make. So we're not second guessing ourselves. We're not trying to go around in circles, listening to this, listening to that, listening to other people's arguments. We trust our own instincts because we've followed our intuition before. We've seen the results. We've also seen the results when we haven't followed our intuition, and we start to learn to trust it. We also develop deeper resilience because our body can return to safety quicker because we're listening to our body. So when we're in that situation and our body is telling us no, and we get out of that situation quickly because we're listening to, this is a no, I need to be out of this situation. And then we regulate and come back to center. We learn very quickly how to listen, no, leave, regulate. And we actually build stronger resilience and ability to cope in those situations. And we also create more authentic alignment in our lives. So we actually start to live the life that we want to live. And this is something that I'm learning very much at the moment how to do. I've spent a lot of my life influenced by other people in a way that I didn't want to be, and I didn't even realize I was being influenced. And it's taken me a lot of effort and a lot of energy to break that control and to start to step into being who I truly am. And if I'm honest, I'm still learning who I truly am as I go through this process, as I learn about my nervous system, as I learn about my intuition, as I learn about all of my gifts, all of the things that I have at my disposal that are part of me that maybe I haven't used in the past. So I'm learning all about that, and I'm learning about myself. So just remember that when we do these somatic practices, it starts to shape who we become. So every pause, every breath, every time you listen to your body, it starts to generate that real positive change, and we become the person that we want to become, which is the journey that I'm on. So just tuning in and asking yourself, what's one body whisper you've noticed lately? And did you listen to it, or did you override it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and how you tune into your intuition, and whether this actually helped you or not. And if it did, remember to like and subscribe so you get all of my beautiful content. And I'd love to connect with you more inside my free group, The Sacred Pause, and I will drop the link below and we can get to know each other better.